Let's wait another minute or so as some more are coming in. Great. Well, welcome everybody. Very exciting to see you all on the line for our roundtable, transforming our schools by changing our school boards. My name is Enrique Ochoa. I'm a parent, alumnus of the district, longtime community member, and part of Juntos Podemos. And Juntos Podemos together we can, is sponsoring this event. And so really want to welcome everyone on it, because this is our first community roundtable, or talleres, which we hope to have a couple of months that talk about various issues of pertinence to our communities, to the schools, to ways that to issues of race and class and ability and gender, and all the things that oftentimes don't get talked about in school and community, to see what are the exciting things people are doing out there, what ways can really be involved in transformational change. And so again, Juntos Podemos is Together We Can is a collective that builds on the strengths of our communities, that recognizes that our communities in and of themselves are strong, bring different knowledges and ways of looking at the world, all of which is historically in the system, and the system works to erase. But we know we're much stronger when we bring our full selves in, when our communities all show up in themselves, when our students come to class and they're with a lot of love. Welcome everyone else who's coming in. I see more people coming in. Welcome. Feel free to you weren't muted when you came in, so you can mute yourself. That'd be great. We'll have time for discussion as we move on. So that's my welcome. I want to quickly introduce to you Veronica Miranda Cordero, who's the co-host of tonight, and so we're co-moderating together, Veronica.
So hi everyone, nomás una pregunta, si ocupan español en el chat, vamos a tener también, si quieren preguntar preguntas sobre los talleres que estamos haciendo. Tenemos una amiga, una compañera que sí va a ayudar con eso, su compañera se llama Socorro, y si por favor tienes una pregunta en español, ponlo en el chat. Pero igual como estaba explicando Enrique, soy madre y también soy pues aquí con el grupo Juntos Podemos. Nomás estamos aquí para continuar las prácticas que tenemos. Tenemos 3 personas aquí presentes que van a apoyar para continuar con las prácticas que tenemos hoy, ¿ok?
Great. One quick thing, I believe, I believe that are folks okay with it being recorded? I think we're going to be recording the event. Is Roy recording?
Yes.
Okay, well, if someone's recording it, again, just be aware of that, folks. So if you somehow need not to be seen on here or to change your name, I would urge you to do that now, if you want a sense of anonymity.
Okay, if I was muted, this is Roy. I am recording because this is so important to get out to everybody, the broadest audience possible. And I also published you in my Rolling Heights Gazette and put it on the Buzz and Next Door, because this needs to unify people to get things together to move forward. You guys are doing a great job.
Okay, well, thank you, Roy. But again, the admonition is that if you want anonymity, you can change your name, yeah. So with that, Socorro, is there anything else you want to add? Socorro Orozco?
No, not really. Just to let everyone know, I'm going to be taking some notes, translating some parts of the meeting in the chat. And so just be mindful of that when you speak, so that it doesn't go super fast. That I'm not writing everything down, but I'll be taking some notes. Just be mindful when you speak. Y buenas noches a todos. Si hay alguien que necesite que le traduzca algo del español al inglés, nada más pueden ponerlo en el chat, o decirme, pueden también levantar la mano en las reacciones y yo les puedo traducir la pregunta o el comentario que tengan. I think that's pretty much it. That's all.
Gracias, Socorro. So, for those of you who don't know, right, they are, so Juntos Podemos, among the things we've been doing, right, has been working to open up the school district, right, to make it more representative, and we've been involved in the demand through the California Voting Rights Act to transform the voting process and then to reshape the way we see the school district. And so I'm going to introduce Jill Ochoa, right, who already welcomed you, and my sister, who will give kind of an update on that struggle, and then we'll proceed from there.
So I've been given 3 minutes, and some of this will be familiar to you because you've also been involved in this struggle, and others it's new. So I have several talking points. The first one is, back in December 2019, lawyer Carlos Perez, working with a collective of us from Juntos Podemos, issued a demand letter to Hacienda La Puente Unified School District, drawing on the California Voting Rights Act to move from at-large elections to by-area elections in our school district. We were following about 200 other school districts in California who have already made that move. Afterward, there were a series of community meetings early in 2020 where maps were discussed, and the school board ended up voting for map 3. Many in the community voted for map 4, but they voted for map 3. And by selecting the map, basically what the board did was they also selected the election sequencing. And so while the board was fine going with the CDRA, where the contestation has emerged has been around which areas will be up for election in November 2020. As many of you know, this is a historic move because this will be the first time that we are guaranteed representation on the board from La Puente and Belinda. And while according to the California Ed Code 5021B, the 2 areas that should be up for election in November 2020 are areas 1, Belinda, and areas 3, downtown La Puente and parts of Hacienda Heights. However, the school board has been pushing that issue, and they filed a writ making this a legal case, basically a writ against the LACO, the Los Angeles County Office of Education, along with the LA County Registrar, hoping that they could decide which areas would be up for election in November 2020. Their preferred area is Area 4, and this is not the whole board, but it is the majority of the board. Area 4, which is in Hacienda Heights, which is basically, if they had the election in November 2020, they would be guaranteed 2 positions on the board, leaving still none in downtown La Puente and parts of Hacienda Heights. A week and a half ago, the issue went in front of the judge, Los Angeles County Superior Judge Mary Strobel, and she rejected the district's writ, knowing what we knew all along based on the California Ed Code, based on kind of LACO's no action, because no action was needed, because we had the 2 trustee areas where there was no representation. We were celebrating a week and a half ago, and literally hours later that same evening on Friday, we got word that the district's lawyers appealed the judge's decision. The lawyers submitted over 800 pages, and they also altered their original argument. This is where we stand today. There has still been no word on the appeal, but the reality is that the judge's decision stands until we hear otherwise. The whole process has been costly in terms of time and certainly in terms of legal expenses at a time when we know the economic precarity that we exist within in the midst of a pandemic. This has also led to increased racial tensions, unnecessarily so, in our community among Asian Americans and Latinos, unfortunately the way the groups have been positioned. If the board gets what it wants, it would enable some precedents in the state of California, and basically it would grant board members more power to determine what areas are up for election, precisely what the California Ed Code aimed to prevent. So this is a strong issue both here in our district, but also it may have ramifications outside of our area as well. So far, we have the judge's decision on our side, and we go forward with the idea that it's going to be up in areas 1 and 3. That is what the LA County Registrar has currently listed. That's my quick update. Hopefully I did it in not too long. Veronica, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you. Enrique, did you want to introduce our lovely panelists that we have?
So Jilla, the poll you're doing after I introduce, right? Okay, thank you. Yeah, so we're really, based on that, right, that we're in the struggle now around the school board. The school board elections are coming up, and we have this transformed map in ways that definitely brings in far more effort really to be able to transform it and to elect people who represent folks locally. We wanted to have a broad conversation that allows us to discuss what a board member does, right? Who are board members? What do they do? Do we even know what they do? To what extent are they really present? And also, how can board members be involved in the transformation of schools, in really working with communities, right, to transform schools? And so really, we're really fortunate to have with us 3 amazing educators, organizers, and community leaders, all with significant experience serving on school boards and working to transform education at a variety of levels, at the grassroots levels, in K through 12, at the university level, at school board level, and even at the national level, all working really to transform these policies and the system. They've all been highly effective in their board work, and I think they probably have the scars to prove it. And in part, hopefully they'll talk about, right, what happens and how we can really transform this. But they all imagine and have a different vision, right, for schooling than we traditionally see, right? And that courage to have a vision, right, is really important. And this is among the reasons we wanted to have them here. So let me quickly introduce the panelists. We have first Ivan Garcia, one of our own La Puente locals, 60-year resident of the city of La Puente, alumnus of Hacienda La Puente Schools, probably before they were called Hacienda La Puente Schools, a retired educator, former school board member, and a member of JUNTOS PODEMOS. Secondly, we have Lonnie Cuptroy, who teaches in the departments of Chicano, Latino, Latina Studies and History at Cal State LA. Lonnie is also a past board member of Montebello Unified School District. And then thirdly, we have Carolyn Torres, who's a teacher, educator, community organizer, and currently a school board member in Santa Ana. I believe just elected about a year ago, but is also up for re-election as well. So she'll tell us about that. So we've organized the discussion to provide both kind of general information, but also about how these members have been involved in working to transform the schools. And so we're going to have a discussion. So it'll be split up, so we'll get a little information about the process, about what a school board member does, but also begin to discuss right, what else, what things they've done. And then we'll have time for question and answer. So with that, Veronica?
So the first question I'm going to ask, sorry, give me a second. So Lonnie, if you want to go ahead and start the discussion, what inspired you to run for school board and why did you run?
How to start with me. I think well, first of all, I want to bienvenidos a todos, welcome everybody. I'm really excited and I'm very grateful to have the opportunity to sit here and to share my experiences. To be honest, it's been about 2 years since I've been off of the board. And it's been an incredible experience. I was there for 5 years serving, and so I hope that whatever pearls of wisdom of my experiences that I've gone through will hopefully support those individuals that maybe have in their mind an idea of, I might maybe want to run, I want to do something, I don't know. So I'm really grateful to JUNTOS PODEMOS to be able to put together this really important panel, not just for Hacienda La Puente district, but also for other school districts, right, and councils and whatnot, right? This is very critical conversations that we need to be having more. So thank you for doing that. The short answer why I ran, and to be honest with you, I think when I announced it, first of all, I wasn't planning to run. The short answer is I ran to transform the district, into a space that was more about 21st century learning, the impact of children and families, and that's really what was important to me. But it was multi-layered, and I'll break it down very short. I think, I was born and raised in Montebello, product of the district, the daughter of public school educators. I have been in education all my life, teaching in LAUSD. I was finishing up on my PhD at UC Irvine, and what I'm trying to say is I was not a career politician. I did not even think of, it wasn't even in my mind in my career path to do something like this. I was more a grassroots community organizer. And at the time I was volunteering and working with nonprofits and community grants to develop school-based gardens in the city of Bell Gardens, where I've been working for a number of years. And we had an incident of injustice with students and families during that time. This is a story that I've never shared publicly, that I am, since we're recording, I might as well just put myself out there, right? And I see just applauding. At the time that I was volunteering and working, we were organizing an event for student recognition. And it was about 250 parents and students that were going to be recognized utilizing funds from community nonprofits. And when individuals, who I'm going to keep nameless, heard that I possibly was running for the board, and at that time I really wasn't, I was about to get an endorsement from the union, the teachers union. And when they had heard about this, they decided to block the event, and meaning we weren't allowed access to the schools, to the facilities. We had been planning this event for a really long time. And we had to change that event within 1 week. And I met with those parents and those students. It was very difficult for me to sit there and to tell them that we had to cancel an event because of a decision that I made and run or not. But in my mind, I said, to me, I was greatly concerned that our leadership was not, at that time, was not really interested, invested in the children and the families that were coming, especially in Montebello. It's broken into north and south, and I'll talk a little bit more later. So that was the moment when I said, I'm all in. And I walked every day, door to door, for 3 months with my family, my friends, teachers. And that was when I really started learning about the issues. And I think one of the things that we learned was, that there were outdated bungalows that were still operating from the 1980s that should have been demolished, right? That teachers were actually teaching in, right? Predominantly in the southern area. There were a lot of disparities between the north and the south. There was outdated infrastructure. Staff couldn't keep up with the cleaning of high traffic restrooms. Music, art, dance, athletic programs, they were hacked to the bare minimum and lacked a lot of support. I know folks hear these things on and on, lack of technology, a big gap in the achievement, low morale among staff and faculty. But the biggest one for me was at Montebello was the only district in the state of California with what they called a co-superintendent model. When actually we had 3 superintendents if you add the deputy superintendent in there. So basically what was happening was you had salaries, health, retirement, benefits combined. You had the district and taxpayers that were paying close to $1 million a year for just these 2 salaries. And so what you were seeing was, at that time when I was about to run, was the entire district system, its departments, special ed, curriculum, textbooks, infrastructure, business, its philosophies, the way that it was operating like we were still in the 60s and 70s. And so when I got in and I actually challenged an incumbent, with teachers and family caravanning, rain and shine, right, in the neighborhoods, with my ear and with an open corazón, right, I went in because I really love my district and I was there to really try to improve it. And so I know this was a long answer, but my short answer is I went in and I had no idea what I was about to get into, which is what I think most board members, right, when they're about to run, they have no idea what they're about to get into, but they know that they've got the change and the passion in their heart.
Thank you. Carolyn, do you need me to re-ask the question?
No, I think I'm good.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so similarly, I had never had intention to run for office. I've been a student activist and then grassroots organizer for 20 years, right? And so, you know, a lot of the work I had done on fighting gang injunctions in Santa Ana, fighting against police brutality and gentrification, a lot of ground, like on the ground work. And you know what? One of the first things you do when you're doing any kind of organizing is like you go to city council or you go to the school board, you speak at public comments, right? That's like the most kind of traditional way to have some sort of public presence where everyone can see what's going on. And so time and time again, like they do not listen to you, right? They don't unless you're gonna escalate it to a certain degree. Like they're really not paying attention to what you're saying if they are not already on board with you, right? And so, and I would see how the public would get used. So if the whoever's on the dais, whether a city council or a board member was for something, then the public support was like, see, this is why I want to do it. But if they were against it, it didn't matter how many people were there, right? And so because ultimately they had to feel like there was more to risk one way or the other. So if they were okay with risking the community outrage, then they wouldn't care what you did. If they were not okay with risking the community outrage, then they will care what you say. That's essentially what it is. They weigh the pros and cons. And what people in power normally do is wait folks out. Like one of the most powerful tools that people in power have is time, because they know that when you're working class or even middle class, really anybody that has a life, right? They have other stuff going on, and so time and time again, we would like advocate. As I'm part of a couple different grassroots organizations for various things, ethnic studies, as an educator, and then I'm also a teacher, right? I was teaching high school, and now I'm teaching middle school. But so time and time again, we would see this. So there was a vacancy on our school board, and somebody was like, well, do you want to run? I'm like, I never wanted to be on a school board. But then, you know, I had some friends that had gotten on school boards and other folks, and I'm like, you know what, they're awesome. And they were able to be there and do okay stuff. Like, okay, let me just go for this appointment and see what happens. Well, I'll get it or I don't get it. That's it. And so I went for the appointment, and then it happened, it turned into something completely different. Because when I was running, or when I was trying to get appointed against a bunch of other people, I was clearly the most qualified. The only teacher, the only person that had like any kind of education focus on teaching, the only person that has an education-minded philosophy to life beyond like institutional schooling. And then, you know, time after time, we went through so many interview rounds, like 3 weeks in a row. People were all supportive. Because I'm an organizer, every time I interviewed, I brought like 20 to 30 people to make public comments in support of me. So all of this pressure, and our board in Santa Ana is unique. It's, you know, it's all brown, it's all supposed progressives. It's been like that for a while. And so everybody thought I was kind of a shoo-in. And that's not what happened. So they deadlocked, week after week, deadlocked on me getting the appointment. And what that did was galvanize the community, because they're like, what the hell? Like, why are you not supporting her? We're all watching this live and on the TV. Like, why are you not supporting her? And so it got a life of its own, like beyond myself, beyond, oh, I'm just gonna see if I'm getting appointed, right? And so like, it became very, it was intense. Like, I didn't realize, I knew people were gonna be against me, but I didn't think they were going to be against me for this kind of thing, because it wasn't a full campaign, it was just an appointment. And then, we deadlocked over and over and over again. The folks one of the guys I was working against, or running against, they kept saying like how he was like a nice guy, like that was his main like claim to fame. And I'm like, well, what does niceness have to do with anything? And who said I'm not nice, right? And so like, why is that a criteria all of a sudden for what the heck? So I got kind of this like angry, radical brown woman right away, even though I'm completely personable, right? And so like, you know, so then I had to make the decision after I didn't get the appointment, because it's going to go to special election. Am I going to run? Because now I have to put some resources behind it. I don't have a lot of resources, and my base of supporters are not people with money. They normally donate to elections. So after some going back and forth, I decided to do it. I went through the whole process, and you know, it was rough. It was a rough campaign. I was attacked left and right. I got no endorsements, nothing. Nothing. None. Aside from a couple friends who were on a school board. That's it. No elected, no institutions, nothing. And because folks in power were blocking me, and they were, the whisper campaigning and how I'm a radical and all these things, and what that did though was again galvanize folks, because they're like, what the hell? Like, why are you all pretending that she's not qualified to do this? And so we ran a tough campaign. Like the whispers got back to me, right? There was stuff like, oh, she's gonna do a drive-by. I remember I told my students about that. They're like, what are you gonna do? Throw pencils at them, miss? And like, they were just like, what? And so I was just, and it was, I had to develop this very thick skin, right? And, they were discrediting my master's and just all kinds. Just because she's a teacher doesn't mean she's a good teacher, which is true, but like, I had a reputation of being a good teacher. And so anyways, I didn't get any endorsement along my way, and it was completely people power. Like, Santa Ana is a city of over 300,000 people, and we walked the whole city multiple times just based on a base of volunteers. It was like 25 to 50 on straggler, but consistent like 20 to 25. And we did it just based on people power, and it was a huge, and I won by like a 17% margin against somebody who had turned out of city council. And so like, it was a huge victory for the community. And again, it wasn't planned. It just sort of happened, and it became something bigger than just my campaign. It became like this condemnation of like the kind of status quo politics of the city of Santa Ana. And so now this year, a lot more people are thinking of running for city council and stuff. But it was a huge. It's surreal. It was very surreal.
All right. Thank you. I love the history is the most important part, right? Because a lot of times we ask these candidates why did they run, and it's really, to me, it's really awesome when you get to hear their stories of what created them or what pushed them. So Ms. Garcia, I'm gonna ask you the same question. What inspired you to run for school board, and why did you run?
Thank you. It's a pleasure. It's my pleasure to be here with you. Es un placer estar con ustedes. Muchísimas gracias. I will begin. As an educator, my purpose for deciding to serve on the Hacienda La Colonia Unified School District Board of Education revolved around my deep desire to help address the academic needs and school success of all students in our district. I've been a resident of my community for 60 years in La Puente. Specifically, my professional experience and interests are in research-based educational practices that promote student academic achievement. When I ran for school board, I was a consultant to educational personnel at both the Los Angeles and Orange County Offices of Education. I provided training and technical assistance support in multilingual, multicultural education, and English as a second language. Having been a former K-12 bilingual education teacher in my district, Hacienda La Puente, I was particularly concerned and had questions about our district's response for improving student academic achievement, including classroom practices, curriculum and instruction, assessment, and appropriate implementation of instructional programs for meeting the needs of immigrant and language diverse students within our school district. The board, or the district, was experiencing a large registration of new incoming language diverse students at that time. And few schools were providing differentiated academic instruction to our English learners with a need for specific types of educational support. Oh, incidentally, at that time, our district had approximately 31,000 students K through 12, compared to less than 18,000 today. Additionally, as a parent and community advocate, I was always strongly focused on the need and importance for fully engaging parents of all students in our community on the issues of quality education and academic achievement. I knew then that it is important for families to feel comfortable interacting with school personnel, and that schools must involve families in our students' education in culturally sensitive ways. I believe then and now that students' cultures and languages should be valued and affirmed and built upon as assets for their learning, and that educators must value and build strong partnerships with families and the community. Finally, I was motivated to run to the school board because I also strongly believe in the imperative that school administrators and teachers hold high expectations for student performance and behavior, irrespective of social economic status, language ability, gender, ethnicity, or race. Thank you.
Thank you. So right now, I'm gonna pass it off to Gilda. We're gonna do, because we want some interaction from folks right now, because I know it's a lot to take in. So we're gonna actually take a poll right now. So I'm gonna pass it off to Gilda so she could present the polling that we're gonna do.
I muted myself. So we are eager to hear from you, and one of the downsides of Zoom, it makes it harder, right? We're learning a lot from our participants, but I'm going to ask you two questions. The first one is really to get a sense of how much contact you've had with school board members, and the second one is if you've had contact, what form has it taken? English is in first, and then right after is in Spanish. So I'm launching the poll now. And the poll is open. Please, it's anonymous. Please be honest with how often have one of your school board members reached out to you? Never, 1 to 2. Does anybody else? Give me a thumbs up if you cannot see the poll. I'm not sure why that, it may be if it's on a phone. My apologies. We'll read out the results if you can see it. So we have 33 votes in. There are 47 on the call. So if you can see it, please vote. I will close it shortly. Okay, I'm going to close it. We got 76% of the vote. Okay, someone close it for me. The other co-host, my brother closed it. So, okay, let's share the results. So question number one, more than half of us have never, the school board members have never reached out to us. And so what does that say about affecting change and expecting accountability of our community if they're not reaching out? And we have on the call people who have been very engaged, right? So that's even more serious. If they have reached out, what do we see in terms of the results for number two? 47% say again they haven't reached out. If they have reached out, it's either through a flyer or at an event, at a community event. So we have a little bit of mix there. Just to get a feel for, again, what is our interaction with board members? To what extent are they reaching out? Are they transparent with their actions? And are they really seeking to build community? So with that in mind, we're going to turn the floor over to Yvonne Garcia, who's going to share a bit with us about some of the roles of school board members. We'll hear from her, and then we'll hear what we think the role should be, and then Lonnie and Carolyn will chime in. Yvonne, the floor is yours, and I will start the screen share when you tell me.
Thank you very much, Gilda. I appreciate it, Dr. Ochoa. Thank you. Let's segue. We're going to show or display on the screen the talking points that I will briefly address today on the topic of, favorite topic, school board member service. Let us look at slide number 1 and the quotation at the top from the California School Board Association. Gilda, do we have slide number 1 on?
It's on there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Now I mentioned, thank you. I mentioned the California School Boards Association. In brief, we refer to that as CSBA, California School Board Member Association. The statement at the top, and we'll look at it together. It is a concise statement referring to the main responsibilities of a school board member. What does it say? The board has a responsibility to involve and engage the community and stakeholders in appropriate, meaningful ways, and to communicate clear information to the community about district policies, educational programs, fiscal conditions, and progress on goals. Now, this is what they say with respect to the overall broad goals, but this is to look more closely at responsibilities that the California School Board Member Association has outlined for the board members throughout California. Let's continue to look at the slide. And again, I will share with you that it is very important. School board members, let's look at the first question at the top. Who are school board members anyway? And that's a question by the California School Boards Association, okay? That's a question from them. And let me tell you a little bit about CSBA so you can appreciate the power and the force that they bring with them on issues of school board membership. CBS, or CSBA, California School Board Member Association, is a non-profit organization that represents school board members throughout California. I'm sure that Dr. Cupchoy and Mrs. Carolyn Torres know all about this. Board members rely upon the CSBA for providing them with pertinent resources and information. Annually, they sponsor very informative and interesting school board member conferences and conventions. As a board member, you'll get to know this. All right, now, let's continue looking at the same slide on your screen. On it, it has a summary of the primary duties and responsibilities for school board trustees as addressed in the publication entitled School Board Member Service, What It Takes to Lead, by CSBA, School Board, the California School Boards Association. And they ask the question, what are school board members? Okay, what are they? And that's on the slide that you're looking at. Let's see how CSBA responds. They respond with, and you can read it with me, school board members are locally elected public officials entrusted with governing public schools in the community. While school board members are elected as individuals, they serve as part of a government or governance team, one which includes each board member and the superintendent. All right, let's look at the second question that CSBA poses and answers. Why do we have school boards? Citizen oversight of local government is the cornerstone of democracy in the United States, they say. It is appropriate then that we entrust the governance of our schools to citizens elected by the community to oversee our school district. Furthermore, school boards provide direction and oversight for the professionals who manage the day-to-day operations of schools. They also provide accountability to the community, and that's important to all of us. All right, if we can take a look at slide 2, Dr. Ochoa.
It's there.
Thank you. Let's look at the third question that CSBA asked in their periodic. Actually, it was a very nice article that they wrote. And let's see what that third question is. What is the school board's role and what are its responsibilities? CSBA responds. The role of the board is to be responsive to the values, beliefs, and priorities of its community. And they respond with 5 duties that they outline. Actually, I'm summarizing them, but they are outlined more fully in their periodical. Let's look at number 1, duty number 1. Setting the direction for public schools in the community by ensuring that a long-term vision is established for the school system. That's one of the duties of the school board. And when they talk about vision, I think they're discussing that vision reflects the consensus of the entire board, the superintendent, and district staff as to what the students need in order to achieve their highest potential. In other words, they're busy determining goals, objectives, priorities, and plans to assist the students to achieve their highest potential. Let's look at duty number 2. Establishing and maintaining an effective and efficient organizational structure that supports the district's vision, and by bullet number 1, if you're with me, employing, and this is so important, isn't it? Employing the superintendent and setting policies for hiring other personnel. Bullet number 2 there. Overseeing the development and adoption of bylaws and policies. Setting a direction for and approving adoption of the curriculum. Establishing budget priorities and adopting the budget. And the last bullet, providing direction for and adopting collective bargaining agreements. Now, if you've been to school board meetings, perhaps you've just heard the different unions who work at the district approach or speak or address the school administration and the superintendent regarding collective bargaining. It is a big issue and a big responsibility in the district. Number 3, let's look at the third responsibility listed by CSBA. The board has a responsibility to support the superintendent and staff as they implement the established vision. And remember, the vision refers to goals, objectives, priorities, and plans for our students. Let's look at the first bullet under 3. The responsibility includes making decisions and providing resources that support mutually agreed upon priorities and goals. The next bullet, the responsibility and duties are to uphold district bylaws and policies that the board has previously approved. And finally, the duties involve being knowledgeable enough about district efforts to explain them to the public. Now, I feel that's a big one, and that's very important in my estimation. Let's look at the next slide. Thank you, Dr. Ochoa.
It's there.
Thank you. Slide number 3. Let's follow through with responsibility number 4, as indicated by the CSBA. Okay, CSBA says that the school board must ensure accountability to the public. The board represents the community and is accountable to the public for the performance of the schools in the community. In other words, it evaluates the school system and the progress toward accomplishing the district's vision and communicates that progress to you, the community. The board is responsible for these duties that we have under that statement. Let's look at bullet number 1. Evaluating the superintendent. They're responsible for that and setting policies for the evaluation of other personnel. Next bullet. Monitoring student achievement and program effectiveness. Monitoring and adjusting district analysis. And monitoring the collective bargaining process. Again, very big duty. I hope. All right, let's look at.
Reminding you all, if you can mute yourself, that would be great.
That's not me.
I understand.
Oh, we don't want you. Yeah, you're speaking.
No, if I'm going. Okay. Thank you. Are we there?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, let's look at 5. Let's look at 5, and the last duty is outlined by the CSBA. Demonstrating community leadership. Board members have a responsibility to speak out on behalf of children. Board members are advocates for students, the district's educational programs, and public education. They build support within the community. Further, the board has a responsibility to involve and engage the community and stakeholders in appropriate, meaningful ways, and to communicate clear information to the community about district policies, educational programs, fiscal conditions, and progress on their goals, their vision. Finally, says CSBA, we're down at the bottom of slide 3, the board says, board members fulfill these goals by working together as a government team with the superintendent to make decisions that will best serve all the students in the community. Now that's a summary. Clearly, the periodical has a great deal more to say, but I summarized it and with respect to the more important points that the CSBA is stating. So thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity.
Great, thank you, Mrs. Garcia. Right, that was I think a very good overview of what the roles and duties are, and some of those may be familiar with a lot of us, but for some of those, I think, that's what they should be doing. And so I wanted to move to our next question. I want to ask Carolyn this question. In part, you already kind of touched on the first part, but I think what aspects of being a board member most surprised you? You kind of indicate that, or what's important for community members interested in trying to change the schools? What should we know?
So, what surprised me was what the role of the board members are. The culture of being on a board is very it's very conforming. Like you're kind of put in this culture where you're expected to conform and no longer be of the community because you're like a governing policy maker. And again, I'm recently elected, and I felt the pressure the first month in after going to that CSBA conference. So when I went to the school board conference, and I was in the new board member orientation, it was it was helpful in that I was like, this is why board members don't feel like they should be moving on things that the community thinks are important. Because you're told over and over and over again, you're a governing board, you're a policy maker. There's this phrase that I heard at the conference, and I've heard from various board members that I heard at the conference as well, so it's the phrase that's there. It's like, don't get in the weeds. It's like, don't get in the weeds. And I was like, but I'm grassroots. So like, how do you not get in the weeds? So, but that's the idea that you aren't, like all the things that are super important to the community, like the small kind of details and logistics that community members know, are considered the weeds. And so there's, and to a degree, you can't do every battle because you're one person, and my district has, 45,000 students, right? And just as many parents. So obviously you can't be part of everything, but if you're hearing these concerns and you come from the community and you already know what some of the main concerns are, that's not really when you get into this space where you're told like you shouldn't do this or you're not supposed to do this, and so, and I'm actually glad we're doing this because I'm still pretty fresh on the board, and I would like to see what I think years from now. It's a lot, and I think even as a board member, I have an education background. I'm a teacher. I'm a K-12 teacher, right? So there's a certain amount of the learning curve that I didn't have to learn. And the folks that we elect, whether it's city council or school board, and I say this a lot, it doesn't mean they're better or that they're more knowledgeable. It just means they had more people vote them in. That's all it means. But we assume that because they're up there as a school board that they're more knowledgeable. And that's not always the case. They are more privy to some of the background knowledge, so that your role as a board member is to really immerse yourself in that background knowledge, like the items that you're given, really going through the budget. So there's some learning curve that's there. And so when people are newly elected to a board and they don't have a background in schooling, not only are they learning how to be a board member, but they're learning about schooling. And where do they get that advice from? The superintendent and the cabinet and the staff members. And so depending on your cabinet or your staff members, they may or may not have the same philosophy that you had when you were running it, right? And they may not be community centered, they might be like bureaucracy centered. And it doesn't mean they're bad people. It just means that's the mindset, like that's the culture of the board. And so when you're a community member and you're trying to make change, you're coming at it thinking like community, but the board is an institution. Like the culture is different. And so part of the challenge as community members is bridging that gap. And then part of the challenge of a board member, if you're really community based, is also being a bridge and meeting folks halfway. The problem is a lot of folks on school boards, again, because they're learning the system, they're learning the educational jargon, right? They get so kind of insulated into what they know. And like I said, I'm on a very like community-based board, and not to say that we're all perfect, but I agree with there's a lot of things that are not okay. But I am on a community-based board. I know there's a lot of other boards that are less community-based, that they're pretty much just show up to the meetings and that's it. Like they're not fielding calls, they don't talk to folks. And so I think as a community member, one of the things that, which is unfortunate, is that the board members most likely are not going to reach out to you. That's the culture of the board. They won't. They do stakeholder meetings. The district will they'll do some sort of email, social media, mailers, but there isn't a lot of real interaction with the community that isn't centered on a specific task that you want the stakeholders to do, right? So we're going to bring parents in when we want some engagement because we're going to do this. There's never any just authentic kind of, we just want to engage to see what's going on with y'all, right? And so I was starting to do that. I was having parent circles, but then COVID hit. So I really only had like 2 months and I couldn't really do what I had planned to do because I was going to do house visits. I was going to treat it like I'm doing community organizing the way I would have always done it. And so it was, it's difficult. So as a community member, if you're trying to move a board member, one, if you have to do the math, if you're trying to get an issue or something approved, you got to get 3, right? And you got to work on those 3. And I think one thing the community does sometimes is they won't even reach out to the people that think are opposed to it, but you should. You should, because even in board members that seem contentious, they're still colleagues. And so you want to make sure that you're reaching out to all of them and they all know that you're reaching out to all of them. And then also like the public comments, again, they're going to public comment once isn't going to do it, but they do have pressure. And you have to figure out which board members respond to community pressure and which ones will not. And sometimes the ones that say they don't respond, like they don't care what the community thinks, they do. They're just trying to create some sort of buffer from themselves. So there's ways that you can get folks to listen. There's like, if in terms of like when you have to reach out to them. But the bigger thing is you need to make sure that we're getting folks elected that are willing to reach out to the community, and then the folks that are on the board that you're trying to build a relationship with as well. Because the reality is most board members are not doing it the other way around. So you have to try. And then, sorry to take up too much time, but the cabinet superintendent, one of the things I've been trying to do is try to help folks navigate the school systems, because I think unless you're on a board or you're really in there, you don't even know what a cabinet is. Like you don't even know how big of a role like cabinet, upper and like mid-level district staff have in implementing what you do, because the board itself is not looking at everything. We are not the ones like looking at every single thing. We are responding to what is presented to us. And so it's the people that are doing the work behind the scenes that actually have a lot of the pull. There's interpersonal dynamics at play as well, right? But they're the ones kind of compiling the information for the board. And so it's important for us to know who those folks are. But yeah, that's a little bit.
Right. No, I think that's very helpful, and I think we're going to ask probably one more question, and maybe go to question and answers after that. But the question here is for Lonnie Kupchoy. Don't get in the weeds, right? Is not an admonition. Is not an admonition you listen to. As someone who was in the weeds, can you maybe talk a little bit about the process of making change in the schools? For example, in Montebello, if you can talk a little about. What is that process that you're able to, right, one of those able to get ethnic studies in, or some of the LGBTQ, statements and policies in?
Okay, so the interesting thing about Mona, I definitely was not one of those in the weeds. I was, I just did my thing in the sense that I continued to stay as a bridge between community, right, and board. And I just wanted to add, because thank you, Carolyn, for being so like eloquent in some of these experiences, but when I first got in, how I saw the board is it's like an arranged marriage. And you're in it, and most of the times it's very dysfunctional. They put the funk in dysfunctional, and you've got to work with it, and you need 3 to move the policy, right? So one of the most important things for those that are thinking about maybe running or currently on governance right now, right, it's about gathering folks that are like-minded. Do not spend your time on the folks that you're trying to convince them to believe that, you need to have solar energy and it's good, right? You don't need to spend your time trying to do that. You need to be working with community-based kind of work like groups, right? So I think for us, I think we at Montebello, I'm very proud of, we were able to progressively, create so many different policies. LGBTQ is one of them. I think, we had Pride Month, we had a lot of students that were actively engaged. We had gender neutral restrooms. I mean, it was a lot of different work. And I think one of my babies, I'm gonna call it one of my babies, is the ethnic studies, right? And I think for myself, kind of beginning, my background in history, teaching it and being involved in the community, I know the value of ethnic studies. I benefited from it. I lived it and I breathed it. And I know a lot of folks also who have gone through that similar process. So being an advocate for it personally, but also trying to see how schools in Montebello were ready for something like this, we weren't sure. So one of the things that board members can do is develop community forums. And you can actually go from site to site. In our case, because Montebello's huge, right? We developed clusters. So we had, our north cluster, our south, our east, etc. And we had them at our high schools. And we actually went into, each high school and had community forums where students and parents and faculty came out and they were sharing their experiences about what do they think about ethnic studies? Do we have any classes there? Different kinds of questions. And let me tell you, once we started that train, there was no going back. In fact, from that moment on, I give more credit to the parents and the students who really wanted this in the district. And it wasn't something like, we're ready for it. It's like, this was so overdue last year, right? We should have had this like 10 years ago. Why are we not doing this now? And how do we bring this in? And so it was almost in a sense like our board at the time, it made sense for us to be able to move forward with a plan. So it wasn't a question of should we have ethnic studies? It was more, what is it going to look like? And let's gather data from all of the different students and faculty and kind of gather how would we implement this. And from there, we developed an advisory board with different stakeholders, right? But different folks that came together and they were developing where is it gonna go. So for Montebello, it would actually became a requirement, right? 9th grade at the time was entry level. We had seniors and juniors that were able to take classes, Chicano studies classes. And also the most important thing, it was about organically, right, having teachers that are teaching this in the classrooms, right, having a say in kind of developing a living archive, right? That was the vision of it. Now, the practicality of it, what it looks like today, as you know, no systems are perfect, right? But I'm going to argue with like every form of governance, one of the major issues I've seen in my experience with all school boards and my experience talking is how do you transform outdated policies to be culturally and pedagogically relevant today, right? So in other words, you will find a lot of school districts that are still operating the way that it did in the 70s and the 80s and in the 90s, right? You really will, and it's kind of scary. And if I get that question later, I will tell you our special ed department was operating like in the 60s, right? We were more a compliance district, right? Instead of being proactive and talking about how do we change labeling, how do we create exiting programs, how do we connect it, to pipelines to colleges, right? So these kinds of ways, developing community forums, I think for us with ethnic studies is something I'm very proud of. It's a model that was a pre-K-12, so we see it implemented in the intermediate school, in the elementary school, and I know that there's a couple folks in the forum that I see their names, and I just want to recognize those individuals because it has a lot to do with the leadership that they have in working with the right staff and the right people together.
Great.
Well, so we have questions coming in the chat. I know some folks, we want to be mindful that some people may not want to show their faces, or they may want to use the chat feature. It's totally okay. I mean, this is all new to all of us, the Zoom feature. But to anyone on the board, I'm trying to make sure, because I'm going to start with this question. I don't know whoever wants to answer this one from the panelists. How do you involve the community members that do not have children in the district? And is there an opportunity to outreach to retired professionals to volunteer and share their expertise? I saw other questions, but I'm scrolling, but that one I'm going to throw out there to any of our panelists that want to jump in on that question or possibly answer it. But please do share if you want to pose any of the questions to our panelists, please.
I can't. It's hard enough to just get parents that are in the district to provide space for them. Like I was saying earlier, like a lot of the spaces are like task oriented, regardless of whether it's resident, whether it's teachers, students. It's like you are, and we do need stakeholders in these tasks. That's for sure. But that's pretty much the only function of anybody outside of the district is during some sort of committee or stakeholder things. There's very few things. I know we've had certain board members in Santana that have done a lot of parent organizing. So they've been building organizations that have been trying to have parents organizing with other parents to start thinking of themselves as neighborhood organizers, not just parent organizers at a school site. I haven't been part of that. That was before I got on the board, but he's one of my board members and doing a lot of good stuff on that. And then we do have like wellness centers, which are a good idea, but in practice, there's some kinks that need to be worked out because, or some issues with it because.
It's less likely for folks to go to a board meeting and be upset. By that time, they're already like it's been overboard, right? So kind of Cafecito con el Distrito became a space for us to be in a more welcoming environment, a more chill kind of place, conversation. So I would recommend it. I don't know with COVID now, right? But but before maybe you could do something like the pan con leche or something like that, but through Zoom kind of stuff.
Yeah, I was starting to do that. I was asking the principals and parents that I knew already to gather some parents and at the school site, and I had I'm a teacher too, so I had to take some days to do this, and meet with parents, just have a conversation and really kind of explain what I've explained here, like how the district works. So no, that's like a really great idea. Now I'm doing coffee with Carolyn, like on Zoom, and I've been bringing in parents, different stakeholders to have a conversation that everybody can witness, because that's pretty much the extent of what we can do right now. But yeah.
So those are great answers, and really I was going to repeat Adriana's question, which I think touches on it, right? How does the board really know what the community and parents and teachers and classified and student concerns are if they don't do community outreach? Right. That kind of presupposes that. Yes.
When you get a chance, this is Yvonne. I had to share a little bit. But there are already established opportunities within the school district on parent meetings that are held, such as the PTA, the school site committee, the coffees with the principal, the bilingual advisory committees, the district bilingual advisory committees. We call them BAC and DBAC and the school site. So they're already built into the system. Clearly, we need to evolve from that and determine and be creative. We can invite businesses. We can invite former alumni who have businesses or have interests that the community would join. But you've already got built in some things, and you need to know about them, and you need to do them.
Right. Well, see, and that's the key, and that's what they're mentioning, right? It's they're there, but who knows about it? And is it just a little clique that kind of runs it?
And there's also, I know a lot of like the cabinet members or upper level administrators in the district. From what I've heard in various districts, like they rarely, the ones who are super community based will do site visits. And so it seems kind of like people should be doing site visits. Like this should be an automatic. Like you're going to school sites, you're meeting the teachers and the students, and even though they're not quite authentic, but at least you're there, right? But there's folks in different districts that never visit a school. There's superintendents that never go to schools. There's administrators that are higher level that are making a lot of choices for curriculum and things, and haven't been in the classroom for a long time and haven't really seen what's going on. And I think what the board can do, but very few boards actually do, is change like the culture of the district to push some of the higher level administrators to do this, like to constantly ask those kinds of questions, like, well, have you been to the school site? Have you done this? How do we know people are going to be involved? Like those kinds of things. But again, that takes the cabinet and folks will listen to the board if the board keeps pushing on these things. But that requires board members to have a community-based understanding of their role, right? And again, there's so much pressure against that community-based understanding beyond like task force stakeholders. But yeah, so it's important to get folks on there, and then it also moves the board. So like for ethnic studies in Santana, it had been on the books for 5 or 6 years, and people were really pushing when that initial push of ethnic studies a few years ago. But it never didn't get the requirement because it got stalled in the district bureaucracy, intentionally so and unintentionally so for other folks, right? And part of the reason was because people weren't willing to push, and there's all these stalls in the district. And once I got elected, other folks on the board are like, let's do this. And so we were able to push, and then myself and another board member were really intentional of being on that committee to make sure that we're super involved in the process. And we presented to everybody in that committee as presenters. And that's really unheard of for board members to be presenters of content, right? And so, but I'm not going to pretend that I'm not an expert in this field, and the other board members are knowledgeable in this field too. So it's really doing these things that are considered like weird or strange for a board member to do. Like it's not like the culture for board members to present to staff or to district members because they're supposed to be separate, right? So it's an interesting like dynamic. But yeah, it speaks to like the concerns that folks have, like why don't the board members do this? Because it's not the culture. Like we have to change the culture, and we have to get good people in there, and you have to put pressure, and we have to build relationships. But yeah, a lot of people know that school boards are stepping stones to higher office, right? So they're just not even
right.
attention.
Veronica, there's a question.
So Carolyn, this question was asked towards you, but it's up to you, to your discretion, if you feel comfortable answering it. Our new superintendent, we just received him, is Dr. Jimenez. So folks were just asking if you wanted to share anything about him, but again, this is up to your comfort. Don't feel pressured, you don't have to answer, just because we do have a lot of parents on here that are curious to know who he is.
So I didn't have that much interaction with him. I just got elected in November. I was only there for a few months, and then COVID hit, and then he got hired in your district. So, but the interactions I had with him were warm, and he did have a community-based understanding. So you're not starting with a completely disengaged, like a superintendent who doesn't understand community issues at all. Coming from Santana, we're very community-centered, at least in theory, right? Which is the first step. And action is the second step, right? But the first step is like making sure they have a general understanding of what it means to be community. So you're starting in a good spot with him, but again, I can't really speak. And he left on a good note. People were happy with him, but I don't have enough personal experience to say one way or the other. But I think you're starting with a good person.
Thank you.
Great. Yes, we're hoping to be able to get a meeting with them soon.
I hope so too. I hope.
We're in the process.
So our final question for you all is, do you have any advice for us? We continue pushing to transform our schools, or if you have any advice for potential school board members.
Donna, you want to start with that one?
Advice. My goodness. Well, I think I've kind of given a little bit throughout, right? It's I was looking at some of the chat, and I think what I'm sensing is, I'm an optimist. I really am. I'm one of those individuals where I just don't give up. Since I was little too, it was like always told, like, you can't do this. Okay, watch me. right? You can't do this. Okay, I'm about to go in there and I'm about to do it, right? I strongly believe that I was reading some comments in there about how do you plan to heal the divide between Chinese and Latinos, right? I know nobody wanted to take it, but I'm going to take it because I'm part Chinese and Latina. So I might as well be the one to address that one. You know, I think one of the major issues that we need to think about at the core of everything is really children. That's really what it comes down to. And I think, and I'm going to be the one to say it, I think sometimes adults need to put petty politics aside and really think about what is the major goal, right? And I think sometimes board members, when they step into spaces, they have a lot on their plate and so much being pulled at them, but it's not that. It's supposed to be a part-time service, but it ends up becoming a full-time job, right? I've seen some comments, I don't know fully like the whole history in Hacienda La Puente, right? But I can share this, that I was one of those board members where I walked into a school, talking about changing a culture, right? I walked into a school and I would get letters on my card talking about issues. I would have secretaries slipping me letters asking me for help from different people, right? People would catch me. I was one of the visible board members everywhere, and no matter what, people were upset or angry or happy or excited, I always welcomed them and took that approach. And I truly believe that whether this, I was reading the comment, I'm going to read out loud if that's okay. The comment is, how do you plan to heal the divide between Chinese and Latinos? Board member Kwok said today in the Chinese World Journal that he has been a subject to rampant racism. Well, let me tell you, when you step into the board, and this isn't to scare people, but you become stripped of your private citizenship. You are in many ways owned by the public and owned by the community for the time that you're there for the term. And the reality is that until you serve that time, it is an honor to do it, but it includes media, it includes approaches, it includes the way that you're seen, the way you conduct yourself, how you speak, right? You can't be sitting in a meeting and people are really upset and then you're just gonna go ghetto on them, right? And even though you want to, maybe your inner voice is like, I just wanna, but you don't, because you listen. You have those kind of, you understand the different perspectives. And so I really believe that at the root, with women, especially when we step in, you have the race card, but there's a lot of sexist politics. I was one of the individuals that was targeted, right? They said I had a boyfriend in every single school, right? Tried to take pictures of me and post them on blogs. I mean, they were more interested in my work. I mean, less in my work, but more in my personal life. I mean, you didn't see me putting out things like, oh, you know, people are doing something. No, this is part of serving, right? So the best thing I can say, whether it's racist or sexist politics, etc., the reality is our schools need to heal. There is a lot of trauma that has happened generationally. And I believe that the only way that we're going to take a step in healing that is if we actually start having dialogue with each other. That's the only way that you can change that culture, is the dialogue, right? Whether people are upset and angry, that's fine. Be frustrated with each other, but I really think it has to begin with the dialogue, and that would be, you know, my pearl of wisdom, right, when it comes to how you
So,
talk to you about that really quick, in terms of if you're thinking about running. So I had a campaign 2 years in a row. I'm campaigning this year because it was a long appointment process and the vacancy was only for a year, so I had to turn around and run again. So about the whole thing about like Lonnie was saying about the like you're in the spotlight, that's a huge thing. And especially if you're like a grassroots organizer or like a community-based person, the identity you have is going to change once you're in elected office because people treat you differently. Like I've had folks call me a politician. I was like, like I was like, oh my, what? You know? And so like I couldn't. It was so like I can't believe someone would. And they weren't saying it in a demeaning way, but when I hear politician, I was like, oh my God, right? And so it's that kind of thing that people see you a certain way. And so some of the decisions you make, you may have a plan in the future for it. And so you're voting or saying things because you have a plan, but everybody doesn't know your plan. So they may see what you're doing as something that is contrary to what they think you're about, right? And so, especially as like, you know, I'm in my late 30s now, and there's a lot of young people going up. So it's like they're expecting all these things. And I'm like, okay, like, and really listening to what their concerns are and understanding, why they may or may not be disappointed in something that I'm doing because they don't know what I'm going for, right? And so you have to be able to ground yourself in what you're doing and be willing to listen to folks to figure out if your grounding is getting wavered, right? Like, and there's also the you have to have thick skin. Like you have to have thick skin, and you have to, I would say, if you're gonna run, build a core of people around you that are gonna be like your support base, who will be supportive of you, but also be willing to push you a little bit, but not push you too much, because there's so much pressure, especially if you're trying to be community based. If you're trying to be some whatever person on the dais, then there's not the same amount of pressure, because it's like whatever. But if you're really trying to be accountable to the community, it's a lot of pressure, and you have to be able to do that. And I saw a comment, it was like, the board members complain about their day jobs. I teach. Like, that's like, in teaching, I was exhausted going to the board meetings after I was teaching. But it did also help me too, because again, the culture of the board is so removing, like you feel yourself being torn. But when I was in the classroom and I would see their faces, it would remind me, like, it made it harder for me to be removed when I'm interacting with the kids every day, right? And so it's just if you're thinking about running, just make sure you are grounded. It's going to challenge you. You're going to have probably little identity crises here and there, because it is difficult. And to go from like an activist, call everything out, to having to be strategic with what you do is a challenge, especially if you're used to speaking out, right? And so you have to be ready for that. But we need good people on running for boards. So if that's you, like, I encourage you to run. Just make sure you have your grounding.
Well, really, thank you, Carolyn and Lonnie and Mrs. Garcia, for really an amazing discussion, and really emphasizing the importance of persistence, of pulling on your personal history and experience to motivate you, so that you're there working to try to listen and dialogue and learn from people, right? As Jesse Henderson says in the chat, communities must elect board members who will listen to the communities and be held accountable, right? And that requires real authentic people and not politicos, not the politicians, right? And all three of you kind of bristled at that. And I think, again, that's very important. Veronica, you want to add something?
So I just want to, go ahead, Ms. Garcia.
I just wanted to add a couple of very practical strategies or opportunities to get to know your school as an old school board member. Think about acquainting yourself with the Teachers Association, with the union members. Many of them live in your community, and visit your classrooms throughout K-12. Attend sport events and invite parents after a school board meeting to meet with you, to have coffee with you. Attend city council meetings if you have a city council within your community, to get to know the issues that involve many of your parents. So these are just practical opportunities, and I thought I would just bring them in. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. That's really important, because most of the time we forget, like, this thing when we talk about community and unity, these two things. So I just want to emphasize, there was members, I'm just going to say members, on our call today. So they are listening, and they are taking this information, because they wouldn't be sitting on these calls and actually paying attention. So just being mindful of that this is a space we created as Juntos Podemos to create these dialogues, but then also continue those dialogues outside of here. Is that elections is coming up, and I think we've been so with COVID that we tend to forget that November is just around the corner. So it's just remembering those things of what I'm not going to say what members are on here, because there was a couple of members, but it's really important that we continue these conversations with them. The school year for us is going to start in about 2 weeks. So that's going to be a whole nother changing with distance learning going on. So having those conversations with our board members. But I just want to be thanking our amazing panelists that were able to share their different experiences, because one of their information wasn't valid in anything, because I felt like a lot of our community members that were asking questions were able to continue the conversation of holding folks accountable, but at the same time, how do we also hold ourselves accountable for holding other folks accountable? So Enrique, I'm gonna pass it back to you if you wanna close off with anything.
Yes, no, thank you, Veronica. I think you put that very well. I mean, right, that's the goal of this space, right? The space is to draw people in, to hear different ideas, to reimagine and think and see how things can happen. And so, yeah, we definitely want to have, right, board members on here, listening and learning, superintendents on here. I think I see one from another district, right, on here. We want the administrators to right, that is their role, to dialogue. And all too often it's easy because of all the other pressures, right, to create the barrier, to reinforce the hierarchy, and then to forget, right, that the communities have knowledge and are more than just people sending their kids to school for the ADA or the attendance rate, right? And so again, I want to thank everyone for being on tonight. Please keep. Stay tuned. We are definitely going to do some other things regarding, right, the elections in Hacienda La Puente coming up. We're also thinking of other workshops. I don't know. We have our Instagram account that someone is going to put right now in the chat. Brian put it in there. And we also have our Facebook page as well, right? That we're rapidly developing. But we also know there are other community groups out there, and we're working, right? We're working to connect with you all. So I think Brian just put it up there. So thank everyone for joining. We look forward to more dialogues. And I steal my sister's words there.
Can we give our panelists a round of applause, because this was their time that they put into.
Yeah, so the girls can hear, or
you can use the Zoom. But thank you.
Very well, very educational as well. Thank you, and thank you, Lani and Carolina, por esta presentación formidable. De verdad. Señora García, mis respetos para usted. It's been a long time, Mrs. Garcia.
Yeah, she's OG. I like her.
It's a placer. Gracias.
Thank you.
Grazie.
Okay, well, thank you all. Have a good night. And we'll see you all soon.
Bye.